Hello there, everyone. If you're watching this video, then you are part of the TTOR army, an army that is building itself up one subscriber at a time. Now, I know it's been a while since I uploaded some content. I've been very busy lately between increased hours for my day job and working on my book project, Hanover, and working on quarter stuff and whatnot. It's just been hard to find any time or any energy, for that matter, to sit down and make my usual content for you guys. This particular video you'll be watching today is something that I've actually been meaning to get around to for a couple of weeks now, but I had all this stuff come up and I just didn't have the energy to make it. Well, all that stuff that was keeping me busy and drained, it's all done. It's over with. We're back to the regular schedule as far as my personal life goes. And since I'm no longer working on my book and I'm just waiting for my publisher to finish, I have more energy to deal with stuff like this. So before we get into the topic of today's video, I would like to give you a gentle reminder that I actually have my own alternative to YouTube that currently exists. This alternative to YouTube, as soon as it finishes loading up, is called Quarter, which you can see right here on the screen. Quarter is my open source alt-tech alternative to YouTube that I founded and launched to the world about a month ago. And we already got quite a few creators using it, got some really good content, a lot of features and functionality that sites like YouTube have, but that most alt-tech sites don't, including features that YouTube doesn't have, like a live video chat room that you can live stream to your channel from, or an Insight virtual currency that allows you to promote your own videos and channels instead of us doing all that work and using editorial decision making. And Quarter is the champion of freedom of speech in practice as well as word, so you definitely want to get on Quarter today, especially if you're a content creator who's into having a YouTube alternative where you can say and do whatever you want and not have to worry about being censored or having your monetization pulled or anything like that. So get on Quarter today and help us preserve freedom of speech in the video format. Well, now that we've got that announcement out of the way, as you can tell from the title and thumbnail of today's video, today we're doing a third and final expose on the whole Kent Hovind, Chris Jones situation. In the first expose I did a month ago, I talked about how Kent Hovind was an enabler of pedophiles, as was demonstrated by his enabling of his pedophile friend Chris Jones. In the second expose I did, I responded to one of Kent Hovind's defense interviews on Brett Keane's channel, and I showed that even if we accept everything that Kent Hovind said as factual truth, that he had implemented or incriminated Chris Jones with committing a felony by having an overnight visit to a property just off of DAL with the boy Zaire. And how Kent Hovind could potentially be brought up on charges for being essentially an accomplice, a co-conspirator of Chris Jones and his Class C felony that he committed with Zaire simply by staying overnight under the same roof as Zaire. But today we are going to revisit that Kent Hovind video clip that we looked at in the last expose, and as you can tell from the title and thumbnail of today's video, Zaire and his mother have proven that just about everything Kent Hovind said about the whole Chris Jones visit to DAL and about Chris Jones in general was a lie. The video in question is called Kent Hovind Live Defends Himself, Brett Keane, and this was streamed live on Brett Keane's YouTube channel. Has over 1,200 views and over 100 comments and 38 likes, so it's getting pretty good traffic and engagement relative to Brett's channel. So, as we can see at the 7-minute and 52-second mark of the video, Kent Hovind says the following.
Well, thank you, sir. This is so crazy that they would do such a thing. Paul Hansen and I talked yesterday. I've texted him 4 times this morning, said, can you please call in? He wants to call in and explain what happened. My ex-wife, Cindy, right here, was on your program the other night. She bought 3 houses in the neighborhood with the money that from the house her dad gave her in California. One of the houses is about maybe a half mile away around the corner up here. And she had just bought it. It had nothing in it whatsoever except a mattress on the floor. And basically, that's about it. I forget what else. Anyway, Paul Hansen had a little camper, and he was staying plugged in out in front of that house that she owns around the corner.
And the other clip we want to see that's related to the first one occurs at the 10-minute and 9-second mark of this video.
Then he wanted to stay the night at the house that Cindy owns. When she gave the program the other night, she was real deceitful about that. She said, yeah, it's a house near there that DAL controls. Cindy, you're lying through your teeth. That's a house that you own that was just bought. It was empty. So Paul Hansen and Chris and this boy Zaire went over to stay over there.
So, as we could see from those 2 clips in particular, Kent Hovind claims that Cindy Lincoln owned the house that Zaire and Chris Jones stayed in during their November 23rd through 27th, 2019 visit to DAL, and Kent called Cindy a liar for claiming that she did not own the house during the time that Chris Jones and Zaire were staying there. As you guys can see here on screen, the deed to the property that Kent Hovind is talking about shows that Cindy Lincoln bought the deed and claimed ownership of the property on December 17th, 2019, a full 3 weeks after Chris Jones and Zaire had left the DAL property. And I'm not making this up. You can see right above the signatures, it says, "In witness whereof we have set on our hands and seals this 17th day of December 2019. And then you have Mia's signature and Cindy Lincoln's signature and Paul Hansen's signature. And underneath, above the Paul Hansen signature at the bottom, it says that given under my hand this 17th day of December 2019. What this deed shows is that the ownership of the house didn't change from Mia to Cindy Lincoln until 3 weeks after Chris Jones and Zaire had already visited and left the DAL campus. So technically this means that Mia, not Cindy, owned the house when Chris Jones and Zaire stayed overnight there. And Mia is controlled by Kent Hovind and DAL. So technically, Cindy Lincoln was telling the truth when she said that she did not own the house during the time that Chris Jones and Zaire came over to visit in November of 2019. And Kent Hovind is the one who is lying to you about who owned the house when Zaire and Chris Jones visited in 2019. The whole point of bringing this up is that Kent Hovind deliberately lied about who owned the property at the time that Chris Jones and Zaire stayed there, and then he tried to project his sin onto Cindy Lincoln like the unrepentant liar and narcissist that he is by claiming that she's the one who was lying about who owned the property when Chris Jones and Zaire were staying overnight there, when in fact it was Kent Hovind who lied. And he simply tried to project his own sin onto Cindy when it came to this particular issue. Now we got 2 more clips that we need to get through before I make my point about them. The first clip is starting at the 10-minute and 29-second mark of this video, where we see Kent say the following.
Well, there's only one mattress on the floor. The boy was sleeping on a couch, but he got scared. He came in and said, Chris, can I stay with you? And Chris said, let's call your mother. So he called the mother right away and said, look, Zaire's scared. What should I do? She said, well, that's fine. He can stay in the same. It's a queen-size bed on the floor, both fully dressed, stayed on the bed. Paul came in the next morning and said, Chris, it doesn't really look good. He said, look, what do I do? The kid asked if he could stay with me. He was scared.
And then, if you go to Mark Stoney's video, Contradictory Kent, the Slandering Gent, and you go to the 15-minute and 45-second mark of this video, you see Kent Hovind give a slightly different version of this story.
In the middle of the night, Zaire he came to get baptized and did, and had a wonderful time at Dinosaur Adventureland. So Paul is sleeping in his little camper outside. The doors are open. Nothing's hidden or closed. Nothing hidden or secret. So when Zaire got scared and came in and said, Chris, can I stay with you? Chris said, let me call your mom. Mom, he knows the family well. Mom, is it okay if Zaire sleeps with me? Oh, yes, please do. He gets scared easy. So they both laid down, fully clothed, opposite sides of a queen-size mattress. Paul comes in the next morning. There they are, still on opposite sides of the mattress. sleeping in their clothes, door wide open. End of story.
So, as we could see from those two clips, Kent Hovind claims that Zaire was sleeping on a couch, but that he woke up in the middle of the night, was scared, and asked Chris if he could sleep with him in his bed. Kent then claims that Chris Jones called Zaire's mother, asked her if Zaire could sleep in the same bed as him, and that she said yes. Kent then claims that Paul Hansen found them the next morning, fully dressed and on separate sides of the bed. Now, there are several lies that were told here by Kent Hovind in these clips. Where, oh where do we begin? Here on screen, we have a new video by Mark Stoney called Did Chris Jones Drug a Child at DAL? And it is at the 13-minute and 57-second mark of this video where we hear the following.
Yeah, just go ahead with what you think or what you remember in your own words.
Really, all I remember is dozing off. Then he woke me up to get in the bed, and I got in the bed and went straight to sleep. Boom. And I woke up feeling weird.
So, as you could hear in that short clip, we have Zaire, the boy himself, a little older. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The boy Zaire, who I mentioned in my last expose was considered missing or might be missing, whatever I said, he was recently found and contacted by Mark Stoney, and Mark Stoney had conversations with Zaire and his mother, parts of which were recorded and uploaded to Mark Stoney's YouTube channel. So, in this particular clip that you just saw here, Zaire said that he was sleeping on the couch when Chris Jones woke him. He got him into Chris's bed, and then Zaire went back to sleep almost immediately. He also said that he felt weird when he woke up. And the reason why he felt weird when he woke up is that if you watch this video all the way through, you find out that Chris Jones actually gave Zaire cough medicine basically to drug him. Zaire, as you could see from that clip, never said that he was scared and asked Chris if he could sleep with him in his bed. The reality is that Chris drugged Zaire and brought Zaire into his own bed in the middle of the night. Now, when you go to the 9:52 mark of this video, you see the following.
Because, like I said, your mom told me that Chris called her and asked if she could give you cough syrup. Skylar's got an eyewitness account of, something related. Kent said it was just cough syrup or something. The details on that are fuzzy. This was in 2019.
So, as we could see there in that short little clip, Zaire's mother told Mark Stoney that when Chris Jones called her in the middle of the night, he asked her if he could give Zaire some cold medicine. Chris said nothing to her about Zaire being scared and asking if he could sleep in the same bed as Chris Jones. This is a complete fabrication on Kent Hovind's part. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, we don't have her on camera saying that. Well, when you look at the entire statement video that Zaire's mom put up on Mark Stoney's channel, which you'll look at some clips for here later in this video, she admits that Kent Hovind called her about a week after Zaire had returned with Chris Jones, and she admits that Chris Jones told her when they first met that, I have these convictions, which he called charges, of child molestation against me, and I'm on a registry and blah, 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 and that wasn't really a problem for her as far as giving him a chance to, be a changed man. However, well, you'll see later on why things changed. But based on the things that she said on camera in that video that you're going to see later on, I'm convinced that she really did tell Mark Stoney that when Chris Jones called her in the middle of the night, it wasn't about Zaire being scared. It was about whether or not it was okay to give Zaire cough medicine. I'm sure he spun a good old yarn about how Zaire wasn't feeling well and that he needed the cold medicine to alleviate his symptoms or whatever. But the point is, this whole idea that Zaire was scared and he wanted to sleep with Chris Jones in his bed to alleviate his fear, and that Chris Jones didn't want to, and he called up the mom. The mom said, yeah, it's okay. All that's a complete lie, a complete fabrication. Never happened. Never happened at all. Total lie on Kent Hovind's part. Now, when you go back to the Mark Stoney video, Contradictory Kent, the Slandering Gent, you see the following clip beginning at the 1646 mark of the video.
Well, I was just wondering if it was true or not. Paul, did you see Chris in bed with the kid? I'm sure that's true. I'm just wondering if that's true.
I've seen Chris wrestling with a kid, which I didn't think was appropriate, because you just when there's any slightness of that, you don't do that.
So, yes.
I'm pretty sure I did, I said no more of that.
Let Chris give us a defense. Go ahead.
But just to clarify, it wasn't a kid from Dinosaur Adventureland. It was my friend, a kid that came up here with me. Yeah.
And you're allowed to have friends that are kids, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And they know the charges, they know everything.
Oh, I remember. I was mad at Chris.
Zaire, yeah.
I was mad at Chris because I got up and I said, Chris, what's he in your bed for? You got these charges. What the heck are you in bed with a kid for? I'm completely dressed.
Just wrestling. It was also the only bed in the house. It's
Yeah,
not like he had
but
another bed to be in.
anyway, I was just like, you couldn't convince me then that you should have done that. And,
See, the way people say things, he was in bed with a child.
yeah,
There's a way to make it sound worse than it is,
I know, but Chris has to remember, you don't get close to that fire.
But wait a minute.
So, as you could see in that particular clip, the audio recording on Mark Stoney's YouTube channel shows Paul Hansen saying that he found Chris Jones wrestling in bed with Zaire the next morning, and that he told Chris not to get close to that fire. Now, last time I checked, Kent Hovind, it's impossible to wrestle with someone when you're on opposite sides of the bed, allegedly when Paul Hansen found you. So Paul Hansen tells the group, Kent Hovind, that he found Chris Jones wrestling in bed with Zaire, and yet on Brett Keane's YouTube channel, Kent Hovind tells you all that Paul Hansen found them sleeping on opposite sides of the bed when he found them the next morning. Kent Hovind, once again, lied to you. He lied about what Paul Hansen found in that room the next morning. He lied about Chris Jones calling Zaire's mother and asking for permission for Zaire to sleep in the same bed as him, and her saying yes. And he lied about Zaire waking up in the middle of the night being scared and asking Chris if he could sleep with him in his bed. That whole yarn that Kent Hovind told, complete lie. Every bit of it is a lie. Now, when you return to the 10-minute and 53-second mark of the video that we're exposing Kent Hovind's lies in, Kent Hovind live defends himself, Brett Keane. When you go back to the 10:53 mark of that video, you see Kent Hovind say the following.
I didn't do anything. See, some of those who have pedophilia on their brain think, oh man, if a boy lays down with a man, it's got to be sex. No, it doesn't. Maybe the boy needs comforted. There's a lot of privates in this foxhole that go hug their sergeant. Please protect me when the bombs are flying. You morons that are perverts, all you can think of is pedophilia. The problem's in your brain. There was no problem with Chris or Paul or the boy Zaire. The next day, Chris took the boy home. This came up, Mark Stoney keeps bringing this up. Where is this boy? I called the mother probably a week after this event. She said, what do you mean? He's right here. The mother and the boy are sick and tired of Mark Stoney making these lies about them. He's never been missing. He was never molested. He had a wonderful time at DAL. And they are sick and tired of all the folks claiming there's pedophilia. He's not missing. He was taken home the next day. There was no immoral acts there.
So as we could see in that particular clip, after accusing all of us, including me, of being pedophiles or struggling with pedophilia urges, Kent Hovind goes on to claim that Zaire was never molested by Chris Jones, and that Zaire and his mother were tired of all the people falsely claiming that Zaire was molested by Chris Jones. Well, the fact of the matter is that Kent Hovind, once again, is lying to you here. I have here on screen the LaTisha Griffin statement video on Mark Stoney's channel. LaTisha Griffin is the mother of Zaire, And starting at the very beginning of the video, we're going to let the first 3 minutes and 23 seconds play.
Also, no, but I'm not going to lie on that man either.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie on Chris. He did tell me when I first brought him around my family, he did tell me that he had charges, and he told me that they were not true.
Yeah.
And like I said, I feel like everybody deserves a second chance.
Right.
But when my son comes and tells me, you know, what he told me, basically, Zaire just told me that Chris touched him with a paper towel.
With a paper towel?
With a paper towel. So luckily, he wasn't touched.
What, like
physically?
On his private?
Yeah, on his penis. Yes, on his genital.
Oh my goodness. What in the world?
And just because that's a paper towel, like, you didn't have no reason to touch him in his genital area.
No reason whatsoever.
If it wasn't medical. You know what I mean? I can understand if you trying something medical and he's in the bathroom and you had to go in there, you know, and he, you know, done passed out or something. I can see that. But what I can't understand is why is you touching my son on his genital, because then you just trying to get him comfortable with you in that era.
Yeah.
No, I did not. No.
That's called grooming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's how I look at it. But I'm glad that my son knows he can talk to me. But see, and when I tell you I'm so grateful, my son knows he can talk to me and my boyfriend. Because we're not married or whatever. But he came home and he was telling me about the trip that from Dinosaur Land. I didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And this some months ago, you know. But he told me how much of a great time he did have. And he was telling me this, that, and the third. And then when he got back, he stayed at Chris' mom's house with Chris. And, you know, he's so excited about this whole trip that he telling me everything.
Yeah.
So when he went to say, well, Chris touched me with a paper towel on, and I was like, what you mean? With a paper towel? Well, he touched me with the paper towel. I said, touched you well. He said, down there. I immediately walked outside. I said, Zaire, you stay right here.
Yeah.
I talked to my boyfriend about it, which is standing right here with me right now as we speak. His name is Cedric. Would you please say hello?
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Cedric, how's it going?
Pretty good.
Yeah. I'm so happy to be talking to you. Like, all
I
of
am
you.
truly grateful that someone even knows elsewise. But what I did was when my son told me this, I immediately called Chris.
Yeah.
And I told him, you are no longer allowed to be around my family, my home, or anything. If you come over here, I will be calling the police.
So, as you could see in that beginning clip of this video, Zaire's mother told Mark Stoney over Facebook Messenger that Chris Jones actually did molest Zaire because Zaire told his mother shortly after he got back from DAL in 2019 that Chris Jones had touched his genitals with a paper towel on his hand. She then testified that she told Chris Jones that he was no longer allowed to come anywhere near her property and her family, and that she would call the police if she did. And this is corroborated by Chris Jones himself, because in one of Brett Keane's more recent videos where he was talking about the whole Chris Jones thing, he mentioned having contact with Chris Jones, and Chris Jones himself told Brett that he hadn't had contact with Zaire and his mother since 2019, shortly after they got back from their trip to DAL. Now, before you go all, well, that's just his mom saying it, why don't we hear Zaire saying this is what Chris Jones did to him? Well, let me give you exactly what you're asking for. Beginning at the 21-minute, 31-second mark of this video, we see Zaire himself enter the call and confirm what LaTisha was saying in that first clip that we watched.
Everything. Hey, Zaire. Zaire, let me ask you a very personal question. Put that on mute. Nobody else need to hear anything I'm finna ask you. When Chris touched you with the paper towel, what was the reason that he done it? I need this. Was it that you were probably finna black out, or you need to tell me directly if you remember this particular time of day or night. What was the reason he touched you with the paper towel? All right. Did he touch you on your genital, meaning penis, with the paper towel? He did. And you don't know why. And you wasn't passing out. Where were you at this time?
It was the wrong place to do it, but you know, like,
Hold on. You got to speak clearly right now.
you know, like when you walk in, like the front way it's Boost Mobile.
Okay.
Yeah, it was right there. Like,
Was your clothes on or were they off?
there. But oh, I see what you. So he oh,
Just speak on exactly what happened that day when he touched you with the paper towel. You said your clothes were on.
I see what you mean. But no, he had pulled him down.
He pulled what down?
My pants, my underwear down a little bit.
Did he say why touching you? All right, yeah, we'll go through with this. I sure will.
So as we can see in that clip, Zaire himself came onto the call and confirmed that Chris Jones had touched him on his genitals with a paper towel after Chris Jones had pulled down his pants and underwear. So we don't just have Zaire's mother claiming that this happened, we have Zaire himself saying that this happened. So because the mother and the boy's testimony agrees, this probably happened, ladies and gentlemen. As a matter of fact, it's more than a probability. It's a definite fact that it happened. But as you guys heard in Zaire's explanation, it didn't happen at DAL. It happened at a Boost Mobile store. And it is at the 28-minute and 42-second mark of the video that Zaire's mother gives more detail and explanation about that.
When my son first came and told me that Chris touched him with a paper towel, at first I questioned my son because he don't have no reason to lie on nobody for one.
Yeah.
When I questioned him, I made sure it was just me and him because I didn't want him to feel obligated, pushed, forced, or anything.
Yeah.
And I talked to me. So I took him to the backyard and I asked him, how did Chris touch you? And he said, with a paper towel. And I asked him, was it on your penis? He said, yes, ma'am. Zaire only says yes, ma'am, when he's scared.
Mm-hmm.
But so he's being truthful.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, well, was it something you wanted to do? He said, Mom, no.
Yeah.
So how did this happen? And he said, well, I walked in Boost Mobile, the store I was working at in South Carolina. He said he walked in. Now, as I didn't even get to Boost Mobile without me being around, but I used to bring the kids with me. But sometimes the kids would be at school and Zaire would be with me, and I'd go and get me, Zaire, and Chris lunch. And Zaire felt like, okay, I can stay with Chris. You know, I don't want to be around Mom, if that made sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So the particular day he's talking about, and this is crazy. And he said when he walked in that Chris spoke to him for a few minutes. They walked towards the back. And this is what he told me when he told me the story. I'm not trying to bring up today what he already told me. I remember this story because it still takes me down through there. You know, if I don't since I'm speaking a little slang right now, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep. He told me, and that's how I know. I ain't asked this boy about this story in over 4 months, and it's still the same story. But I don't need the details because I already asked you the details.
Right.
He told me that Chris was acting like he was getting him, Zaire and Chris, a drink from the back cooler. And it wasn't no lights on back there. I know that very well. I've been working for Boost Mobile with Chris for 6 months. There are no lights back there.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, Chris pulled Zaire's pants and underwear down, and he went to touch him with the paper towel. And Zaire, did he do anything else? And see, right now, even back then, but even right now, if a boy is touched inappropriate by another male, they don't want nobody to know that.
Yeah, that's true.
Right or wrong. They, like, my son is 14. If Chris did touch him sexually, and he's not being 100, he don't want to feel like he's a faggot. Do that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
So, as we could see in that extended clip there, Zaire's mother confirms that when Zaire was molested by Chris Jones, it was in the back room of a Boost Mobile store in South Carolina, and Zaire made it clear to his mother that he was not a willing participant in this. He did not want Chris Jones to pull down his pants and underwear and touch his genitals with a paper towel, and yet Chris Jones did it anyway. That is child molestation, basically bright and in living color. So yeah, Chris Jones literally molested Zaire, contrary to what Kent Hovind would have you believe. And by showing you all these different clips of videos where Zaire and his mother talked with Mark Stoney about these things, Zaire and his mother not only prove that Kent lied when he said that Chris Jones never molested Zaire, but they also prove that Kent was a liar when he claimed that Zaire and his mother were tired of all the drama about this and were tired of all the people claiming that Chris Jones molested Zaire and that they just wanted it all to stop. Kent Hovind lied about all of that. Zaire and his mother were more than willing to talk about this issue publicly, and that's because Chris Jones actually did molest Zaire. We heard it from Zaire himself as well as from his mother. Now, when it comes to this whole Chris Jones, Kent Hovind situation, we can see right here that Kent Hovind not only is an enabler of pedophiles, but that he has lied about just about every detail of the whole Chris Jones-Zaire situation. Even if we were to believe everything that Kent said in his defense of Chris Jones and what happened at DAL, he still incriminated Chris Jones as having committed a Class C felony according to Alabama law when he stayed an overnight at that property with Zaire. That was literally a Class C felony according to Kent Hovind's testimony and according to Alabama law, which means that Kent Hovind potentially, based on his own testimony, could be brought up on conspiracy charges. But as we can see from today's video, just about every detail of Kent Hovind's explanation of the Chris Jones-Zaire event was a lie. He lied about just about everything. He lied about Chris Jones never having molested Zaire. He lied about Chris Jones and Zaire being on opposite sides of the bed when Paul Hansen found them the next morning. He lied about Cindy Lincoln owning the property that Chris Jones and Zaire were staying in the house it was on. He lied about just about everything. And so we now know from this video and the work that other people have done, such as Mark Stoney, we know that Zaire is not missing. We know that he is safe and sound now, but we also know that he was an 11-year-old boy when these events happened in 2019. He's currently 14 and getting ready to enter high school. We also know from the work that Mark Stoney has done interviewing Zaire and his mother, and from everything else that we've covered in my exposés and in other people's exposés, we know that Chris Jones actually did molest Zaire. At minimum, he molested Zaire in South Carolina and not at DAL, but when you consider that Paul Hanson's testimony is that he found Zaire and Chris Jones wrestling in bed when he found them in the morning, and considering that a lot of people, at least when they're kids, they look at people getting it on in a bed and they think that, oh, they're just wrestling. Mommy and Daddy are just wrestling. It's possible that Chris Jones and Zaire were simply wrestling on that mattress when Paul Hanson found them in the morning. It's also entirely possible that Chris Jones was doing the unthinkable and the unforgivable in the eyes of pretty much everyone when Paul Hanson found them, and he just mistook it for wrestling. We don't really know because we weren't there, and so we'll go with the minimalist approach and say that Chris Jones and Zaire were found wrestling in the bed by Paul Hanson the morning after they stayed in that house. But after having done 3 videos looking into this whole Kent Hovind, Chris Jones situation, we have irrefutable evidence that Kent Hovind lied about just about everything that he said regarding the whole Chris Jones-Zaire situation. He lied about just about everything. The only part where he told the truth was that he called and contacted Zaire's mother a couple of days after Zaire had left the park and gone back. That part was true, but just about everything else Kent said was a lie. I would like to conclude today's video by saying for the record that I am done making videos about the Kent Hovind Chris Jones situation. At this point, there isn't really much more to discuss. We've already exposed Kent Hovind as being a pedophile enabler. We've already exposed Kent Hovind lying about just about every detail regarding Chris Jones and Zaire's overnight stay on that property just off of the DAL campus that, contrary to Kent's claim, was actually owned by Mia, not Cindy Lincoln, and Mia is controlled by Kent Hovind and DAL. So Kent Hovind lied about just about every detail of his story regarding the Zaire Chris Jones situation. And even if we believe every word of Kent Hovind's story regarding that situation, Kent Hovind still incriminated Chris Jones as having committed a Class C felony, and that could lead to Kent Hovind being charged with a Class A misdemeanor according to Alabama law. That could happen to Kent Hovind one day. It is a definite possibility based on his own testimony on Brett Keane's channel. And as we saw in this expose series, Kent Hovind was willing to accuse all of us of being pedophiles or having pedophilia urges simply because we pointed out that he was associating himself with and defending the actions of actual pedophiles that are in his inner circle. Of course, I saw Brett Keane's recent video about Kent Hovind and Chris Jones, where he said that Kent Hovind contacted him recently and said that if Chris Jones really did the things that he did, that basically he's disassociating himself from Chris Jones. And all I have to say is, of course Kent Hovind did that. Kent Hovind is the ultimate spiritual narcissist, and he's a lying grifter. And if Chris Jones or anyone else becomes an inconvenience to Kent Hovind, he will cast them out. He will throw them out on their butt. He will chop them off, so to speak. He will disassociate himself from Chris Jones when it becomes an issue that would affect Kent Hovind himself, such as what I mentioned earlier, with Kent Hovind potentially being brought up on Class A misdemeanor charges for being a co-conspirator in Chris Jones's Class C felony that Kent Hovind himself admitted that Chris Jones committed on the DAL, or just off of the DAL campus on that property that was owned by Mia and controlled by DAL at the time. So yes, I am done covering the Kent Hovind Chris Jones situation. If I do talk about Kent Hovind in future videos, it will be about other things that he's done or said or taught. It will not be about this Chris Jones thing. As far as the Chris Jones Kent Hovind thing goes, it is over. It is done. The truth is out there. We all know who Chris Jones really is. The only newsworthy thing that could happen at this point is if Chris Jones actually does get arrested for molesting Zaire and gets sent back to prison for a really long time. That would be worthy of covering in a video, but other than that, I'm done touching this subject. I think I've said just about everything I've wanted or need to say on this subject. And so now I can move onward to other video topics that I find more interesting and more important and more pressing.